Hey guys, and welcome to the Lower Chesapeake Bay Fishing Report, the first podcast to bring you the local offshore, nearshore, and inshore fishing report, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. We got a great fishing report lined up for you guys this week, but first let's hear who's making the show possible. The 2024 Monarch Cobia Classic. The ODU Alumni Association is hosting the ultimate cobia fishing tournament July 11th, 12th, and 13th. All tournament events are happening at the beautiful ODU Sailing Center with spacious parking for both your truck and trailer. The captain's meeting is Thursday, July 11th, and the hunt for the big one begins Friday and Saturday, followed by awards, food, and drink at the dock party on Saturday night. It's only $400 for early registration. After July 1st, that price goes up to $450. And if all else fails, you can even register at the captain's meeting. This year, we've added a weigh station at Wallace's Bait and Tackle in Hampton, as well as Long Bay Point Marina in Virginia Beach. Compete for cash prizes with 3 Calcutta levels, as well as 1st through 5th places, heaviest fish, and the Lucky Dog prize. There are even merchandise prizes for our women and youth anglers. All proceeds support the ODU Alumni Association Scholarship Fund and ODU alumni programming. To find out more, visit them on Facebook at Monarch Cobia Classic, as well as the links in the show notes. Listen up, folks. AFTCO has a new promotion for all Great Days Outdoors Podcast Network listeners. They're now offering a camo sunglasses cleaner cloth with any purchase of AFTCO products. I especially enjoy their hooded sun protection shirts, as well as their Seiko fluorocarbon. All you got to do to get your coupon code is text LCBFR to 779-345-2918. Again, just text the letters LCBFR to 779-345-2918 to get subscribed to our email list, and we'll send you the promo code via email. All right, guys. Well, I'm excited to jump into this next segment. We're bringing back Captain Zach Castro on Not Tugging, and he just had a real exciting weekend in the Virginia Beach Tuna Tournament. Captain Zach, welcome back, man. How we doing?
Well, good. How about you?
Man, I'm excited to jump into this because, it's tournament season, and that's always exciting, but especially exciting because there was a huge Calcutta pot for this thing. I think it was, what, $250,000 or something?
Yeah, it was up there. It was, I believe it's the highest, might be the highest or close to the highest one they've ever had.
Man, that's some real money right there.
Oh, yeah, it was a good one. We were fortunate for our catch our day we fished, that's for sure.
Well, I want to jump into it. So, the leaderboard, there was a couple of names we recognize, like Flying Fish and, playing hooky. And then all of a sudden I'm looking up and I see Not Tugging sitting in third place with 100 pounds, man. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, we when we were fishing, it was, we knew fishing was slow. We'd fished the day before. We actually had a really good day the day before, pre-fishing. We ended up catching, limited dolphin, but nothing to hold weight. And we got 3 nice, decent yellowfin. And we didn't end up going back down there to fish. Me and Jake on Flying Fish, we worked together a lot and, try to help each other out as much as we can. And we went to the north looking, and, there was a couple bites, and Dave Trax on Oblivion, he got 3 big eye bites right out the gate. And
goodness.
So everyone, it sounded like, I was like, oh man, I might have made a mistake, went a little too far north. But, me and Jake working together, we ended up getting a few bites. We caught our 3 fish, and then we ended up getting a nice 18-pound gaffer that we thought for sure. We were like, all right, cool. We're at least in some money for the tournament with that. So we didn't think our tuna actually only being 100 pounds between the 3 was going to hold. And the dolphin got beat the next day twice, actually.
I saw that. That hurts, man. It was close too, like a pound.
That was a good payday.
Oh, what was it, $15,000, $14,000 for the dolphin?
No, $29,000.
Oh,
yeah, it was a big payday.
And yours? How much did yours weigh?
Our dolphin was 18.1, and then there was a 19.6 weighed the next day, and then like 2 or 3 boats after that, a 19.9 pounder was weighed.
Oh my gosh! I know that hurt. I know that hurts your soul to see an 18-pounder get beat by a 19-pounder. But can you imagine being the 19.6 getting beat by 19.9?
Oh yeah, and that had to be a real heartbreaker.
Oh, golly!
3 ounces getting beat.
Oh, yeah, and then watching 30 grand just disintegrate in front of you by, that's like there's $10,000 an ounce. Goodbye.
Oh,
Oh my gosh,
yeah,
that's
I
tough.
couldn't believe the payout for that mahi Calcutta. That was insane.
That's a lot of money for one dolphin. And you use the term, gaffer, and I think that's, like peanuts are kind of the ones you just kind of bail in the boat or bailers, and then gaffer is one that's sizable enough that you're gonna stick that gaff in it to make sure you get in the boat.
Yeah, exactly.
So you mentioned that one boat caught a couple of big eyes, and I understand there was an interesting technicality or self disqualification that went on. Can you give our listeners a little bit of insight into what actually went on there?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the tournament, when you hook a tuna, you're allowed to pass the rod one time. So from the hookup, it can get passed to one person one time, but the first person to take one crank on that reel, it's their fish. They're not allowed to pass it off at all. Well, Dave Tracks on Oblivion, they'd hooked three of them, and I guess they got the first one in the boat, and that was fine. One angler fought that all the way. The next fish, the angler tapped out. He couldn't get it all the way in by himself, so he handed the rod back, handed it off again.
Oh,
So Dave automatically disqualified that fish, so that way he didn't get disqualified out of the whole tournament. Because if he would have came in, one, Dave's not that kind of guy where he's gonna lie.
right.
Two, you could take a lie detector test for these tournaments, and that he would have likely failed that if he would have done it anyway. But yeah, so he just went ahead and disqualified that fish because it went against tournament rules. And then their third one, they broke off after 3 hours and 40 minutes.
Man.
And apparently that was, I think actually an angler ended up swapping out on that one too. I can't remember on that one for sure. But yeah, so he went ahead and disqualified the fish, so that way there was no, issues at all for tournament rules.
But I mean, I guess it goes to show that honesty is always the best policy because in the end, they won the big check at $111,000 for that single big eye tuna. But I'm sure they were shaking in their boots thinking surely someone else is going to come in with one or two, big eyes.
I tell you, I thought they were.
My goodness, man. That's wild. So talk us through, tournament fishing versus just going out and charter fishing. What are some of the differences? And when it came to your strategy, what did you guys, what was the thought process heading out there on tournament day?
So the biggest difference is you don't get to fish like you normally want to at all. All the rules are different. As I've told you before, I troll a lot of rods.
Mm-hmm.
Tournament rules, you're only allowed to troll eight hooks in the water.
Okay.
So I ran a bunch of teasers. I ran spreader bars, teasers. I ran all kinds of stuff to make it look like we had more still. That's the biggest difference, I would say. In your start time, you can't put lines in the water till 7:30, and lines are out at 3. So your timing is dictated on when you can fish and how many lines you can fish. And obviously, there's more money on the line in a tournament versus a charter.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then we ended up, like I said, we had pre-fished. We went south to some water where we knew some tunas were around. We seen a pile of fish. Should have had more than the 3 we got. I think we had like 6 bites, 7 bites or something that day. And we ended up messing around with them dolphin for a little bit. So that took some time away from the tunas. But guy at our marina had caught a 140-pound, 150-pound big eye at the Norfolk Canyon that day as well. So we all kind of changed gears. Like, all right, well, there's big eyes around. That's what's going to win the tournament because it always does. So we all went up there big eye hunting and found, there was some yellowfin up there as well. The Ocean City boats were catching them. And we went out there, started trolling, got out there early, trolling around, looking for marks, can't have lines in the water. So we just went looking for life until lines in and started fishing. And I think within an hour or so, Jake Bolts had a fish on, and I think he got hit by one, got a single bite, got one. And then I was working up towards him, and we got hit by 4 and only got 2 of them. They were kind of lazy bites, and got everything set back out. Got 2 of our fish in, got set back out. And we missed another 1 or 2 bites, and then it was kind of a little lull there for a little while. And then we finally got that gaffer and another tuna all up in that water.
What's the intensity level like? When you get, you're normally running what, 12 rods, and we talked on the last episode that we interviewed you, and you were sharing about how sometimes they all get knocked down at once, and that's probably just fun chaos, right? So when you're in a tournament and 4 get knocked down, what's going on now? Like, what are you doing when 4 get knocked down, but it's tournament day?
Just as, more excited, really. You're hoping. I was upset that, 4 didn't stay on, because I had all experienced guys on the boat.
Okay.
So, everyone knew how to run a spread. Everyone knew how to rig a bait. Everyone knew how to reel in a fish and keep the fish separated. So the concerns of stuff going wrong weren't as high as like it would be on a charter, because where you get one guy that's trying to manage the whole cockpit. I had 7 people down there or 6 people, I'm sorry, that were down there able to manage each other and watch what all's happening. I just had the bird's eye view to kind of say what I needed to say. But no, everyone did good. And, you get that first bite and everyone starts jigging baits and trying to get more bites out of it. And like I said, I think we got 4 bites that first hit. And then, so we went ahead and once we had the 2 fish on, we got them to the boat because we don't want to risk losing them. And immediately we left everything we could back, our long stayed out and we got everything set back out. And like I said, I started just beating a circle right there. So I couldn't take it no more. And then kind of moved on, and you'd see fish jumping out there and they wouldn't eat. I mean, we tried everything.
Oh.
And it's, that's the difference, also with the tournament is I can't throw topwater baits, a popper or like a Ronzi lure, or you can't fly a kite or any of that. And if you could have done that, we could have probably caught more fish. But so you just have to kind of try to figure out what you can on your troll baits for in tournament regulations and try to catch them.
So I didn't know that about the tournament. So it's trolling only.
Trolling only. Yep.
Oh man, that's got to be tough too, especially if you're seeing some bigger fish airing out and they're not hitting your spread. I mean, do you feel a little helpless at that point? What do you?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
I think Jake Bolts on Flying Fish had it the worst. He showed me a video. They had tunas all in their spread rolling and wouldn't hit a bait.
that's torture.
Later in the day, I was like, man, that is just absolute torture. After we caught our 3 yellowfins, we had a stringer in that gaffer. I kind of buggied down to the northeast corner of the Norfolk Canyon where bait tracks, we call them big eyes, hoping maybe right there at the end of the day they might come up and try to hit again, and we never got another bite. But he stayed up there where them yellowfins were trying to get his 3rd fish, and the tunas, he said, were just everywhere, and he couldn't get them to bite.
That's heartbreaking. But so it is a 3 fish stringer, but in the case of Oblivion, they had that one big eye that obviously, significantly larger than any 3 tunas put together. So your 3 were probably in the what, mid 30s range each.
Yeah, all of them were low to mid 30s. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in addition to tasting great, they brought you almost $21,000 check.
Yeah, that's right.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations on that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It was nice to get on the board finally, and and get a check out of it. I mean, anytime you see your name on the board, an awesome day. And like I said, if you can get a trophy and a check, that makes it that much better.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of psychological challenges to a tournament as well. I'll ask you this question, and if you could pick one of the two, would you rather catch a big fish early, like first day of the tournament, and just have to sweat the next couple of days, or would you rather be out there fishing the last day of the tournament, knowing what you got to beat?
I like to get my day over with. I'd rather get it over with, go catch a fish, and I mean, don't get me wrong, the last couple of days of the tournament were definitely stressful, but I'd do it again. I'd fish the first day I could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just get it in and go.
Yeah, because I mean, one, you're kind of going out there and you setting the bar, hopefully, and you never know. I mean, like, we got lucky and nobody really did much the last 2 days on the tuna fishing. So I feel like we made the right call and fished the first day because there was tunas caught to the north and to the south of us. So I felt like no matter where you went, you were going to catch fish. And, if your card was pulled and got lucky to get your fish and make weight, then you're good to go.
Yeah, and there's about 21,000 reasons that confirm that fishing the first day was definitely the right call. So
that's right. That's right.
So talk me through. So your spread was a little bit different. You'd gotten some reports from some of the Ocean City boats. But like if we're going to go out and start tuna fishing here soon, it's late June now at this point. What can we expect out of the tuna fishing bite here in the next couple of weeks? And how are you going to be targeting them?
I honestly wish I had a good answer for you. This has been the weirdest tuna fishing I've ever experienced. They never really showed in good numbers where they were eating. There was no tunas here, and the next day they're jumping all over on the surface and just not wanting to eat. I'm hoping this blow we have this week is going to kind of change it up a little bit. There is some water to the south still that's holding some dolphin, and I believe those tunas are still in the canyon. I have not been out since tournament day.
Okay.
I'm supposed to be offshore Friday and Saturday, and I'm juggling which way to go still right now. I'm really hopeful that something's going to change up and the tuna fishing's going to get good for us. I mean, with the number of tunas we saw around the canyon, I feel like as long as you find life and bait up there, you're going to find the tunas in it. And if you get hit, you get hit. I feel like there's going to be no rhyme or reason to it. You just got to troll and pass a school of hungry tunas and you'll catch a few fish. It's a tough year this year. I mean, it's been the toughest year I've ever personally experienced.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been hearing a whole lot of, reports, and everyone I've been talking to has basically been saying similar things. It's like, hey, when is this, water going to move in, and when are we going to start seeing better numbers? If the tuna bite, doesn't, come together in the way that you want it to, what are going to be some of the alternate things that you might target if they're not available for us?
So I'll be looking for a lot of mahi, doing a lot of that. As long as we get some chlorophyll shots, some good blue water moving in, like we had down to the south, which I do believe is still there. I feel like you'll start seeing the marlin showing up.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be targeting mahi, marlin, and then, you can always resort to bottom dropping for tile fish. But like I have groups Friday and Saturday, they want to tuna fish. So we'll devote most of our day trolling, looking for tunas. And, if we get into the mahi, we'll bail them, do whatever we got to do. And then at the end of the day, if we don't have a good enough catch, we'll go to the bottom, see if we can get some tile fish, get them a good catch, and then come on home.
Copy that. Well, I want to do a quick recap, for our listeners that are recreationally going after, those tunas on their boats. Quick recap on, your tackle and bait, this time of year. What's our primary, you got your spreads out there, but what's our primary baits going to be that you feel are the most successful?
A sea witch with a ballyhoo or an islander with a ballyhoo is going to be your best bet. And then, always have, like I said before, always have a squid chain out with a ballyhoo on it. Spreader bars never hurt. We were catching, we got brought on with Sterling tackle this year. We were catching mahi and tunas on all their tackle and doing good. So, I mean, you'll catch your mahi and your tunas on any of that.
Okay. And then, you mentioned you can catch some mahis on those as well. When you guys are out there and get the chance to get on some mahi, whether it's, that come across a log or, something floating that's holding them, or a grass line, what's typically your first approach? Are you going to troll by them, or are you going to start pitching baits to them?
So I troll by them to see how they react typically. If I troll by them and I don't get any bites on my troll spread, I don't usually mess with them right away.
Mm-hmm.
I'll keep on trolling. I'll kind of mark where it is, what it is, or maybe make another pass and see, from a different angle, see if I can get them to bite. Now, if they do bite and they're all, baler-sized dolphins, or there's a whole bunch of them, and we can just bail them, whether they're bigger ones or smaller ones, I'll pull all my big stuff in, and I keep all my marlin or my light tackle rods on the boat, and I get these little duster lures, which is a little mylar skirt over a J-hook, and you put a piece of bait on it if you want, and I just bump troll the boat right by it and keep on bump trolling around, and you can catch all you want on that. And you can use little grubs with jig heads, and you can literally just fill the box up, real quick if they're cooperative.
So when mahi are cooperative, I've heard this before. I've tried it. It seems to work. Talk me through that whole methodology of, keeping one in the water.
So they are schooly fish. So when you catch one, you keep it all fired up at the back of the boat. It'll keep the school there fired up and in a feeding frenzy.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens, if you can get some squid or something cut up and you can kind of keep feeding the school, and as soon as someone hooks another one up, you bring the longest fish that's in the water, you bring that in, and then you just keep rotating out. Just keep a fish in there. It'll keep the school at your boat, and it makes it a little better. The other day when we were out there, the fishing was so crazy. We caught our 54 fish in like 45 minutes.
54 dolphin in 45 minutes?
Yeah, it was the most insane thing dolphin fishing I've seen in a while.
54 dolphins in 45 minutes. So I'm just going to have some fun with this. That's like that's more than one per minute.
Yeah, it was literally, at one point, my mate was dropping a bare jig head hook in the water and catching dolphin. Just a red jig head with nothing on it. He was slinging dolphin in the boat.
Oh my gosh.
Like, wasn't letting line out. He literally would sit it in the water, and it was just like taking a cane pole and bringing him in the boat.
That's crazy, man. I mean, it
was the most insane thing.
They're that fired up.
Yeah, oh yeah. And it was one of the few times where, like I told you, you pull up and you kind of just bump patrol around, you keep them fired up. I came by, I took the boat out of gear, and I was like the structure they were staying on. They would not leave my boat. And I left the boat out of gear for 45 minutes, and we just bailed. So we had our limit and went on. And then I think there's 3 or 4 Oregon Inlet boats came up to where we were, and they all got their limit out of that same school of fish.
That's awesome. That's a lot of fish to clean. A lot of fish to clean at the end of the day, though.
Oh, it definitely was. And then we had to get ready for the captain's meeting that night for the tournament. Oh, yeah. It was a long day, long couple days. I think we fished the next day for our tournament day.
You deserve a nap. You deserve a big nap.
I'm ready for one.
I'm sure.
I definitely got one of those the day before yesterday. I got one of those. I ended up sneaking out, wasn't feeling good. We went cobia fishing yesterday and flounder fishing in the inlet this morning.
That's awesome. Any good bites?
We got 2 nice cobia yesterday. Released another one and pulled another nice one off, and we got a couple flounder today and speckled trout. Slow fishing. It was we were fishing just inside Rudy Inlet, and the water at the jetties was like 62 degrees.
Wow, that's cold.
Yeah, it got real cold. It was big upwelling or whatever in there. Dropped the water temperature real bad.
Well, I know the last couple of days, the cobia fishing has been real good. I managed to squeak out on Sunday, and then got into one of those mega schools of red drum. And, kind of like what Captain Kenny Mills was talking about a couple of weeks ago, there were several captains out there, Andy Kim, Robbie Bryan. I was there, a few others, and everybody was able to work together. Josh Bourne on the second wind, and just kind of taking turns, getting up, bumping up to that school real slowly, getting hooked up, and then kind of fighting your fish away from the school in neutral, and then the next boat could kind of work in. And it was really cool. The 4 of us were able to work that school for like 2 hours and just catch as many as we wanted. And there was even some really big cobias mixed in, and that was kind of like some fun target practice, trying to pick a cobia out of school of red drum. And then later that night, Austin Hain with Fineo Sport Fishing sends this video of his live from that day where he's like, these fish are so hungry today, the red drum. He's like, I'm just curious. He caught one on a chunk of beef jerky and then turns around and catches one on a water bottle.
Oh, I believe it. When they're like that, they'll eat anything.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned that mahi and the bear J hook, and it made me think of Austin with the water bottle on the red drum. I mean, it's just like, you feel like invincible. You feel like the best fisherman in the world, but obviously the fish are just super hungry.
That's right. That's right.
But I do want to jump back to the mahi real quick. So, sometimes you see them on the grass line, it's really visible. Any tips for like, I've had the experience of like going by something floating, you don't see anything. Is it still worth dropping a bait down just to see like how deep below structure do these fish sometimes hide out?
They can get pretty deep on it. I mean, it's always worth trying if you don't have nothing going on. The big thing is if they're down deep, that I feel like if you're in the middle of the day and the fish are down deep, I feel it, and they're there, they've probably already been hit and picked through. That's what I've noticed. That's not always the case. I mean, they might be down, they might just be off the side of it, and you might have to cast around a couple times or just circle around it, and they might come into the structure. They're not always right glued to the structure. They might be off of it just a little bit, they could have been chasing some bait or whatever. It's definitely worth trying on anything you see floating, to see if you can get any dolphin off of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then, I know you guys catch quite a few fish and you cook a few things up. For those listening, any recommendations for how you like to prepare your mahi when you do eat it?
We do a lot of blackened mahi on the grill and pan seared. My go-to, like I said last time, is the Grill Mate Montreal steak seasoning. Can't go wrong with that. Grill or pan seared. Another one I'll make my girl a lot. She likes blackened mahi Alfredo.
Ooh, that sounds good.
So I'll do a homemade Alfredo with blackened mahi on that, and that's really good. That's always a big hit.
Mm-hmm. That does sound real good.
And you can do that with just about any fish, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I've paid attention to a couple different, fish through the years. I grew up in a, fish cleaning warehouse and saw a lot of fish come and go. And is it true that mahi is one of the fastest growing fish in the ocean?
Absolutely.
So if the way I understand it is that because they grow so fast, they get to a mature, harvestable size very quickly. There's very little chance for them to, get worms or any sort of like, issues. And that's one of the reasons that their meat is so, for lack of better terms, just kind of fresh and light.
Yeah, I've never seen any worms or parasites in mahi. I mean, I'm not saying there never has been. I've just personally never seen any.
Hmm.
Because that makes sense. I never even thought of it like the way you just said with the age of the fish, but because it is usually the bigger, fish that you catch that are older that you find the parasites in.
Hmm. Yeah, they just haven't been around long enough to get cynical or wormy.
That's right.
Well, cool, man. Well, congrats again to you and your crew. I mean, that's just a testament to having a plan and sticking to it, and then being fortunate to pull out three fish that landed you in that third place spot.
I appreciate it. Yeah, a lot of work, a lot of trial and error, and networking with other captains goes a long way.
Yeah, and we talked about that, Red Drum School and the communication. I think as more folks, maybe tune in and listen, and we talk about sustainable practices and the importance of communication. One thing that I love seeing is when captains work together and communicate and really put each other, before themselves. And I feel like that level of community is what I think most of us really want when we're out there on the water is, to know that other people are looking out for each other and making sure everybody's successful out there because we're all going after the same thing, which is a great day on the water and a cooler full on the way home.
That's right.
Awesome, man. Well, Captain Zach, if folks want to get up with you and get out on the knot tugging and catch some of those tunas or mahis or drop for those tile fish or maybe do an inshore trip for some flounder or some cobia and reds, what's going to be the best way for folks to get up with you and book a trip?
Always the best thing is calling or texting me at 757-685-6873. You can also find us on social media on Facebook and Instagram, Not Tugging Sport Fishing. And we also have a website, nottugginsportfishing.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Captain Zach. That's going to wrap up an awesome offshore and tournament report with Not Tugging. And we're going to take a quick break, folks. Y'all stick around. Hilton's offshore charts. The days of heading out and blindly looking for good fishing areas are pretty much over. Don't waste time and money on fuel searching for fish. You need the most recent, highest resolution images to not only know where to go, but where not to go. The knowledge provided by today's technology is critical when planning an offshore fishing trip. So make the choice that professional captains all over the East Coast make and choose Hilton's Real-Time Navigator. The easy-to-use interface and excellent customer service will have you on the fish every time you go. Check them out at hiltonsoffshore.com. That's hiltonsoffshore.com. All right, guys, we've got a new contributor. We're talking to Captain Richard Wasden with Real Blessed Sport Fishing. Captain Wasden, how we doing today, Cap?
No, everything's lovely, my friend.
Awesome, man. I know you guys have been working hard lately, especially in this heat. You were mentioning how yesterday you guys ran a 2-day trip or 2 trips in a day. Talk to us a little bit about what kind of boat you're running and what you guys specialize in and maybe a fish story or two from this past week.
Okay, yeah, man. So the Real Blessed is it's a 27-foot sports craft, 2001 model. I found it locally. The guy that was, I think, he's a assistant principal at a school or something like that. He had it, and I never seen a boat like it local. So I really, I had a lot of deck space. It's a boat that's 10 feet wide, so and it was trailable. So I did some research and found out, that the Sportcraft 272 is a real popular choice for charter captains on the Great Lakes, and I know they get a lot of weather up there, so they can take the abuse from Great Lakes. It should definitely take the abuse down here. So pulled the trigger on it and been real happy with it. Solid, stable boat, could fish any weather I really want to go fishing in. Has a small cabin and a nice walk-in restroom. So good amenities. I added a tower to it, and it's been a good stable platform for that. 3 people in a tower without worrying about it even getting close to wanting to tip on you.
That's great, man. Yeah, I'm looking at some pictures of her right now, and I see she's got that nice big cabin where you can get out of the weather if you need to, or like you mentioned that restroom. I think that's something that is unique to only a few charter boats out there. You get that midday urge, you could just go right on downstairs and use the amenities. What kind of fishing do you guys specialize in, and what have you been seeing and catching this week?
So I focus on Pretty much in the bay fishing inside the bridge and in the Bay Bridge itself. My main focus, I love flounder fishing and sheep's head fishing. Of course, we cobia fish, both sight cast and fishing on the chum pot. We really like chum pot fishing because it gives we really like family fishing, and you could, while you're on this, fishing a chum pot, I mean, the kids can be catching roundheads and bluefish and all these other bottom creatures and small sharks. We actually had a family on yesterday, and the whole thing was his kid's 10th birthday, and he's like, I really want to catch a shark and I really want to catch a cobia. I'm like, all right, well, I know exactly how we're going to do that. So we went and set up the chum slick and had it going, and the sharks came out to play first. So we caught and released 2 to 4 foot sharks nonstop until I got tired of losing hooks and got tired of catching them. And then while we was doing that, we was catching the roundheads, and man, they caught the better part of a 5-gallon bucket full of them. Three young kids, and it was drop and swing action with them using fish bites and lots of smiles, lots of good times. So that's really what it's all about, is making the memories.
Yeah, I love that. I'm looking at some photos from your trip, and I see some big old cow nose rays and some skates and a bunch of roundhead like you're talking about, and I see some cobias mixed in there too. So I want to dig in a little bit on, you mentioned you were using some fish bites, which is one of our sponsors here on the Lower Chesapeake Bay Fishing Report, and catching those roundhead on those. And but I really want to dig into, we see a lot of talk on the Facebook group about, where are some good spots to chum? What are some of the tools and tactics for chumming effectively? Talk me through your setup. When you pick a spot, what are you looking for in a spot to chum? And then what does your setup look like when you're actually going to set up and start chumming for those cobias on the bottom?
All right. So yeah, I mean, one thing's for sure. I like to, anytime with chum, you want a good moving tide.
Mm-hmm.
If you plan to set up and you only got a few hours of fish, you definitely don't want it to be during the tide shift.
Mm.
So you want to set up, you want to have a good steady tide. It keeps your boat in position, 1, and 2, it's going to help that chum slick disperse out, and keeps it more of a refined slick instead of just going all over the place. And then I use my Navionics app a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't necessarily have to use relief shade, and it helps, but if you turn it off, you can really see the contour lines and stuff. And I like trying to find a ditch or a valley between 2 humps, something that's like a pinch point, kind of, like we talk about when we're deer hunting and stuff like that. It's kind of help funnel that stuff through. And it don't have to be much, it could be, the ditch could be 2 to 3 feet deeper than the surrounding hills. And, depending on which direction tide's going, I'll set up on the up current, I'll try to anchor on that up current hump and put the baits and have the chum slick running through that little valley. And we seem to do very well like that.
Yeah, that makes sense, just to kind of get in that more focused area, and then obviously having that tide moving. And then in terms of like what baits are you putting on the bottom, and are you using a J or a circle hook? What's your preference there for bait and tackle?
So I mix it up. So once I get to, I'm setting up for my chum slick, I got a cage, like a chum cage, and I'll put 1 block of chum just in there. And it's got about 1/4 inch holes or 5/16 holes, wire mesh. And then I'll put 1 bag in there that's inside of like a red chum bag. I got a 10-pound weight in there, and I'll send that all the way to the bottom. Let it hit the bottom, lift it up about 6 inches, and it just hangs underneath the boat. And then I'll hang 1 more bag in the red chum bag off the back of the boat. And then I'll, a lot of time I'll dump a little bit of Menhaden oil on that. But once I, get that going, and I normally run a 4-rod spread, kind of setting up catfish style, 1 to the left, two to the back, one to the right. And, I'll mix it up. I'll put a live croaker, live threadfin or eel. I pretty much never use dead bunker, like cut bunker. I think that's a recipe if you want to catch rays and little sharks and stuff. That's guaranteed. I'm not going to say you don't catch cobia like that. I don't. I just don't do it. I prefer the live bait. I think they prefer the live bait, and it helps weed out some of the trash.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll run about a 6-8 ounce weight, about a 3-foot leader on a fish finder rig, and this year we're using Squall 25 star drag with level lines for our charter reels for our trimming reels, and they're doing really good. Even when we do catch the big southern rays and some of the sharks in the 4 to 5 foot range, like the drag handle's good. Haven't had any problems on that. They catch real smooth.
That's good to hear. And I've chummed a time or two, and it can be tough to weed out, some of that trash that you were talking about. When you do get a bite, how do you tell, or can you tell if it's going to be a shark or a cobia? Are there any, clear indications on that initial bite or maybe the run that you can tell whether it's going to be a shark, ray, or a cobia?
I mean, definitely between a cobia and a ray. The rays, in my experience, they don't really take off. You'll see the tip bounce or it'll get heavy, and then it'll stop moving. One of the reasons I like using live bait is we keep it tight, and you can watch that tip, fidget where that live bait's down there swimming around.
Mm-hmm.
If your tip stops moving, either your bait died or, you got a big southern ray that's sat down on top of it, and, it's going to start moving any minute, and it's not going to be as fun as you think. Between a shark and a cobia, they seem to bite about the same to me. They'll come in, they'll nail the live bait, and then they'll take off. I think the difference is you're probably going to miss one and not the other. And then two, looking at your baits, if you do miss, check out your bait. You pull in, you fish, all the scales are stripped off of it. Maybe there's some scratches. You probably missed a cobia. A shark, a lot of times your bait's going to be all mauled up and sliced up. Part of it missing.
Yeah, that makes sense with the, that cobia mouth has just, kind of those, tough, thick grade sandpaper type of, teeth, whereas that shark's going to definitely put some teeth into it. And then down on the bottom, I can't remember if you mentioned or not. Are you using a circle hook or a J hook?
We're using 8-aught octopus J's.
Okay.
I've had mixed feelings on the circle hooks, and I think it depends on the brand you're using. But the gap, some of these new circle hooks, the gaps are so small, and it's fine when you're catching the 20 to 40 pound cobias, but in the rare event, the 70, 80 pounder comes and they got that thick jaw that that their mouth structure is really hard, so you're not going to lip hook them like you would a shark or something like that. And in a lot of cases, a circle hook just does not have that gap opening to get in behind that jawbone. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, I've held many acobias, and yeah, it's definitely like almost like a probably bordering on 3/4 inch, gap, that lip or that edge of that jaw line in order for that circle hook to get a good grab. So is there a specific brand? I think you said it was a 7 or an 8-aught octopus J hook. Is there a specific brand you like that has that gap that's large enough to be able to handle those smaller cobias as well as potentially, get a good hook set in on a bigger one?
So I like the owners. The owner cut points is my go-to hook.
Mm-hmm.
The Gamakatsus, the offshore tackles, and there's another new brand that I can't think of the name of right now. They seem to have a smaller barb that doesn't protrude out as far, and I want the barb to stick out there a ways. That way, when it goes in, you got to take pliers and yank it out. You can't just pop it out easy.
Right. Yeah.
Especially these fish are aggressive. They do a lot of head shakes. You need something that's going to stay in there and hold on to them.
Yeah, I can't tell you the number of times, we've seen a cobia come in the boat, and as soon as they hit the bottom of the boat and that tension comes off the line, you hear the little tink of the hook hitting the deck, and you just think to yourself, like, man, was it really just holding on by the hook tip, and that pressure? And a lot of times that is the case. Um, so switching gears into, you mentioned some flounder fishing as well. When you go out there and target flounder, where are we typically looking and having success here in the Lower Chesapeake Bay?
So I'm a bridge guy. I love fishing the bridge. It's become a lot easier this year. We upgraded the boat and put a Rodan 120 on it, and it really makes jogging the pylons. I don't know how I did it all these years without it.
Yeah.
My arms ain't falling off from steering and shifting all day, and I'm sure my boat appreciates it too.
Mm-hmm.
Transmission isn't going in and out of gear 300 times a day. But yeah, I like jogging the pylons. I like working the linear rock piles with the bridge, and kind of just working that edge. Trying to catch some flounder in their ambush points. A lot of times we'll use a high-low rig or what they call a Skinner style rig, bucktail on the bottom, small teaser up top, strips, Kobe belly strips,
Mm-hmm.
stingray belly strips, anything that's white and has some flesh to it and holds on good works. And just bright skirts, the pink, the white, the orange. And sometimes we'll even, if it's the current's really ripping, we'll get rid of that bucktail. We'll put a 6-ounce bell weight on there, just jig with a teaser.
Mm.
If you spend a lot of time flounder fishing, a lot of your bites are going to come on that teaser anyways. So you don't really lose much by getting rid of that jig and going with a weight.
Okay, that makes sense. And I mean, I've not flounder fished a lot, but when I have, I feel like I've always struggled to get like I'll feel the bite, I'll feel the nibble happening, but I would say I probably miss 8 out of 10. Any tips for how to really secure that bite, or at least increase the chances of securing that bite when you are getting one?
So I think the jigging style, as opposed to the flounder, the fluke rig style, is going to increase the hookup ratio. And the simple fact that you're jigging, if you're fishing it right, you should be jigging nonstop. And then when they bite, really the initial hook set and keeping the line tight. Keeping the line tight is so key with flounder fishing, because all they do is shake. That nonstop vibration coming up is them shaking their head.
Mm.
And that's why a lot of people tell you, and I'm in full agreement, is you don't pump the rod when you're flounder fishing. So as soon as you set the hook, you don't move that rod anymore. You just reel nice and slow and steady. Keep the tension on him, bring him up nice and smooth, and put him in the net. You can start pumping every time that you go to reel down. You got a chance of giving him slack and a chance of losing that fish.
And that's because that mouth, you said that mouth is just vibrating, shaking back and forth the whole time. So any little bit of slack could be just enough for them to shake that thing right out.
Oh yeah, they're masters of shaking a hook.
Yeah, that's true. The few times I've caught some flounders, they do come up and their heads are just waggling back and forth violently. So that does make a lot of sense. I picked up on a couple really good tips there, and definitely feel like anyone listening is going to be, probably adjusting some of their techniques the next time they go out there to target those flounder. And this is kind of a good segue point into talking about, we've been discussing, real blessed charter, sport fishing. But when we're out there and we're targeting those fish, we're not just fishing any old rod. There's also the real blessed custom rods that you guys build as well, or that you build. So for those listening, maybe just give us a quick overview of what types of rods you do build. And then if folks want to get a custom rod built by you, what would be the best place for them to go look for those?
Yeah, I appreciate that, buddy. So, on the boat, we got three main rods we use to target everything. We'll start off with the lighter version, which is our trout, puppy drum, redfish, small reds, flounder, gotcha plugs, baitfish, and that's the Rain Shadow SP845. It's a RX6 blank. It's got a fair amount of glass in the composition, a lot of graphite, and so they're super sensitive. They're a mod fast action, and they can really take the abuse because the amount of S glass they got in them. So those, like I said, those rods are used for a variety of species, and we can transition those into flounder when we're doing my favorite type of flounder fishing, which is jig fishing, single jig operation.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a 2 ounce jig with a skirt and strip of cobia belly or something. And your 10-pound line, you're dropping straight down, jigging, paddle the line, jig, drifting around wrecks and stuff like that. And it puts you in better contact and lighter gear. Spade fishing, you double drown the rod, you put a float rig on it or a Carolina with an egg or whatever, however you target spade fish. They got plenty of backbone to hold on. I mean, we call it, I've talked about throwing the gotcha plugs with it too for Spanish. I can't even count the times we put cobia up into the mid 40-inch range on the gotcha plugs and had success getting them to the boat. And then you talked about you've seen the counters raise. But when we're doing our sunset trips, we use those same rods there too for, spot, croaker, all the little bottom fish. And, it's not uncommon for a big old counters ray to come up and take the bait. And you got to have a rod that's going to be able to handle that and take the abuse. And those rods definitely hold up for that. They're built with all Alps zirconium ring components and Fuji graphite seats. They're just built for the purpose of performing. Then our next one we got is our cobia / sheep's head, heavier flounder fishing. Like I mentioned, when you're using the high lows and the Skinner rigs and the bucktails and the 6-ounce weights, and that's the SW 968s or 967s. Both are good blanks. Throw bucktails very well, throw eels very well. You can take all the drag you want to put on them, and still sensitive enough to catch sheep's head. So I use those rods anywhere from using an ounce and a half sheep's head jig, catching sheep's at the bridge or over the wrecks, in the same rod. I throw cobia bucktails with, throw the eels, and earlier in the year on the black drum bite over on the Eastern Shore, I was throwing 12 ounces of lead and half a crab with a piece of clam and a fish finder rig, and catching those 50 pound class black drum on them on spinning gear over there in that heavy current on the shoals. They kind of do it all.
Yeah, it sounds like they can take a beating, and having all these different options, and by somebody who fishes those areas locally and is building these things with intention for our fishery here in the Lower Chesapeake Bay. I mean, I can't imagine a better setup, knowing that it's got all of that thoughtfulness going into it. So if folks are listening and either want to get up with you to book a trip on board that 27-foot boat that you got there and go after some flounder or some sheep's head or some cobia and reds, or take the whole family out there and do some chumming on the bottom while the kids get to have some fun catching roundhead, what's going to be the best way for folks to get up with you and book a trip?
So both of my businesses have pages on Facebook. That's the best way because I'm not real tech savvy. They could also call me directly at 757-602-6303. Shoot me a text message. If I don't answer, I'll get back to them. And I was going to go into, the importance of the rods and being, multi-purpose. Because anybody that fishes out a boat, owns a boat, is gear space and stowage is at a premium.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can carry 2 rods out there and catch everything you want in the bay versus having 6 or 7 rods in different applications, I mean, that's really adds a lot of value to people, especially charter captains.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. And, certainly not knocking anyone that's, new to the game or new to fishing. But, a lot of times you see a boat headed out and it looks like a porcupine up top with about, 37 rods sticking out. And, you kind of wonder if it's going to be more in the way than it is helpful. So, yeah, getting more efficient with, just a couple of rods that you can, bounce between species on, definitely I think is an advantage to any fisherman that's going out there to target, more than just one species.
Yeah, that's a fact. Especially when you get into sight casting and, all those rods all they are is in the way.
Yep.
And it's sticking up when your sight fishing is in the way. So you got to keep that to a minimum.
Absolutely.
Have versatile gear that can fit all the bills that's the huge value.
Well, Captain Richard, I think it's just cool what you're doing, getting out there, enjoying God's good creation and chasing some of those fish and making some memories for, folks that are on board and their families. Certainly we'll be dropping your Real Blessed Sport Fishing custom rods and Real Blessed Sport Fishing charters links in the show notes, along with that telephone number that you shared. And we really enjoyed having you on and look forward to having you on again sometime in the near future.
All right. Yeah, man. Much appreciated. And I'll see you out in the bay.
Yes, sir. All right, guys, that's going to wrap up a great report with Captain Richard Wasden. Y'all listen to this week's sponsor, and we'll be right back. Killer Dock. Most fishermen clean their fish on something like a unsightly old wooden table or the top of a cooler, somewhere that is not comfortable, not sanitary, and not attractive. Killer Dock makes the greatest fish cleaning station known to mankind. They are built from marine-grade aluminum and are corrosion-resistant clear-coated to protect it from the harsh salt environment. Killer Dock makes tables and canopies at several different sizes. So whatever you need on your dock, deck, or patio, they have a fish cleaning station for you. Check out killerdock.com to see more. All right, guys. Well, welcome to this segment. I'm excited to talk about something unique that we've not covered on this show yet before. And I'm sitting here with my good friend, Ty Griffith. And Ty, welcome to the show, man. We're happy to have you on.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. So I've been following you on Instagram for a little while with 7Fly7. And then, we met through some local business stuff and we've had the pleasure to go fishing a few times.
Yep.
And, before we dive into some of the things that we've had on our fishing adventures, tell us a little bit about how did you get bit by fly fishing? What got you into it? How old were you?
God, fly curious for a long time, maybe as they would say. So grew up in West Virginia, fishing for smallmouth bass, New River, Greenbrier River, that kind of region in southern West Virginia. Mm-hmm. Really good buddy from high school, still a good buddy this day, Travis Williams, fly fished. And I would just give him hell. What are you messing around with that thing for? I can always outfish you. Why do you even bring that thing around? But he just kind of had that, that air about him, and it looked so cool, what he's doing. I just didn't want to commit to it. And then finally, many, many years go by and end up working for the family I work for now. And the patriarch, if you want to call him that, is big fly guy. And then we actually had a marketing director who does quite a bit through Orvis and Project Healing Waters and everything like that. So finally in the right environment for someone to stick one of the rods in my hand. And that was probably 10 years ago. And, it took me really from surf casting off the beach for drum, throwing the, the 8 and bait with the big 12-foot Hatter receivers, traded that in for 8 weights and chicken feathers and flies.
Yeah, definitely a more difficult, like as I've learned about it from you, it's so much more of an art and, thinking about, how you're going to tie that fly and whatnot. So talk me through your first fly fishing trip. What did you go for and how tough was it?
So the guys that I mentioned that I work with today, they helped me pick out the very first outfit ever. And it was February, and I'm living in Virginia Beach at this point. So I lived here for, 20, 21 years. And I just wanted to find a place out of the way where I could try to figure out how to do this without getting made fun of, right? So I don't really want to see this. So there is a grassy section of our parking lot, and I was like, that'll be perfect. So, go set everything up, and I'm, trying to get a hang for this thing and look and notice that there's a little retention pond. I was like, well, if I'm going to learn how to do this, maybe that's a little bit more practical application, right?
Right.
So I'm throwing an 8 weight, and I've got a yellow bendback fly on this thing. Just, I wanted something I could easily see as I was learning how to cast and throw this thing in the pond. And God, man, I'm hung up on a stick or something, right? Trying to get this thing loose. And then all of a sudden the whole line starts moving, and lo and behold, I've got a largemouth bass on, right? Out of a retention pond, ditch fishing, right? So that was literally the first time I ever fly fished. It was second cast, end up catching a largemouth bass, which is a whole nother story from there, right? We've had this building for 20 years, and you tell me there's fish in the parking lot. Right? I was like, I didn't know. I would have been there before. Yeah,
that's awesome. So needless to say, you were hooked after that.
No doubt. Yeah, for sure. And then once you finally, get into salt water and you stick a decent fish, like a decent redfish or something, along those lines, it'll definitely change you. And then, if you're one of those people who wants to kind of always see what the next level is, saltwater wise, you're going to progress up the chain and get into the kind of the big three, the bonefish and tarpon and permit and all that stuff. And tarpon ruined everything.
Yeah. So let's dive into that. So 10 years ago, you get introduced to fly fishing. You catch a ditch pickle in a parking lot on a fly rod. You're like, holy cow, this is great. So then today you travel a little bit to fly fish. Tell me a couple of, you mentioned the big three: permit, tarpon, and
bonefish.
Mm-hmm. Have you caught those?
Yeah.
Tell me let's start with a permit. So tell me a permit story. Where were you? And how'd you get them?
So permit. So point of clarification, landing one on a fly is yet to happen, right? So all the permit that I have brought in have been on a live blue crab.
Okay.
Down in the Florida Keys.
Okay.
If you can cast 3000 series spinning outfit, 7-foot rod, somewhat accurately with a blue crab, I would say there's a high likelihood you can get one of these guys on the line, right?
Yeah.
There's a little bit of art to it, but of all the different species, that technique is pretty straightforward. I think on the fly side, it's not something I've put a ton of focus on.
Mm-hmm.
So limited opportunities, just something I haven't really, gotten that bug. So, I've gotten the eat, and hold back the pigtail from the not failure kind of deal.
Yeah.
But that's permit fishing.
Yeah.
Maybe one day that'll become like more of a focal point.
So next up the list, I would say is probably the bonefish in terms of size.
Bonefish was probably, size wise, probably not, but maybe technicality. So bonefish wise, first introduction to that was in Hawaii, which was probably the worst place that you could ever start your bone fishing career. You have operation in Hawaii, travel there once a quarter for work, and just decided to take, an 8-weight out there, found a guide. And everyone said, what's your experience? Like, I mean, Poppy Drum, in Lynnhaven, that kind of deal.
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, you're kind of jumping in the deep end here is like, well, I'm here. Let's have fun anyways, right? First time I'm ever out there, I get 2. What's the big deal, right? I'm thinking, this stuff is easy. I thought it was all hyped up. I didn't realize that I wouldn't touch another one for over 3.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So your first time in Hawaii bone fishing, you catch 2, and then 3.5 years, no bites.
Yep.
Holy smokes.
So for fishing, that's fishing once a quarter for 3 straight years. So that's probably 12 trips, 12 guided trips.
So you mentioned
you
mentioned your company here has a retention pond with bass. Is it the company location in Hawaii retention pond doesn't have the bonefish? Is that the problem?
Exactly.
Get it?
Yeah.
Man, that's tough. But I mean, I guess that's what keeps you coming back is that
you got to want to go to the next level. I mean, everyone's got their thing, right? If you're someone who's kind of chasing the complication and the achievement, you're always kind of figuring out, okay, what's next?
Yeah.
And it just keeps you coming back. And it's not for everyone. I mean, it's very defeating. But if you are hard-headed, you can kind of get through it. And then, the other thing that I tell some people is sometimes I've found that your success depends on getting the right guide. And I've referred that to, you need to date your guides. Don't just pick one and marry the guide.
Yeah.
Stay with them forever. Find the one, like there's a million of them that are super nice people. But what you'll find is if you fish with quite a few of them, there's some where you just align with communication and tactics. Some are more finesse, some are more aggressive.
Yeah.
And when you find the guide who kind of marries up with your style and that element works well, I think the probability that you actually are more successful goes up. So
yeah,
a lot of guides during that period putting up with me, blowing shots and just basically taking donations where I'm just giving them money to come out and make fun of me, try to catch these. Ended up getting with a guy who I think our styles and our communication matches very well. And we've been just straight crushing since.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that a little bit later, talking about a recent trip, the importance of all those elements. But take me on up through the bonefish journey and into the
Yeah.
tarpon journey.
So that's bonefish. So tarpon's one of those that I just never quite, for some reason, thought that I just wasn't there from a skill set standpoint. And I had someone twist my arm and convince me to come down to Tampa and fish for tarpon with him. Look, I mean, again, I've got like a recurring theme of a lot of failure before success, and then just kind of like epic success after that. So grinding a lot of failure, jumping like 16 in a day and never getting one to stay on past the first surge, all that kind of stuff, like whittled through all that stuff. But there was just something about it, something about the eat that was just like nothing else. And you would just become an addict to the electricity of that eat.
Yeah.
And, after enough time doing it, you start to figure out how to get them to stay on the hook. And then you try to figure out, okay, well, how do I get it to the boat quicker? And then how many can we do? And all that kind of progression. But again, can't emphasize enough there, another fantastic guide who is like a super great friend, like a brother that I love to death, lives in the Tampa area. And, all the success I have is because of the guides that have taught me what to do. So this guy, Ethan Kebbers, I love the guy like a brother. And he showed me the ropes, and yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So translating into where you've gone in your journey, you've caught the bonefish, you've caught the tarpon. Permit still eludes you a little bit, but it's going to come sometime in the future. It's going to
have its day.
It'll have its day.
Yeah.
So fast forward to this past week, you were up here in the Lower Chesapeake Bay, and we've been fishing a couple years together, and you said, "Hey, man, on my list is a big bull red drum on the fly." So for those tuning in who have maybe never targeted, saltwater fish, before I even venture out on my first saltwater trip on a fly, what are some of the key things that I need to have with me in terms of like what size, fly rod, line, and maybe lure? Like talk us through some of the
specifically
basics.
Like maybe Chesapeake Bay, these big bulls and cobia.
Yeah,
I think they're a pretty
exactly.
similar class.
Yeah.
So I think kind of the standard, if you want to go out and look for cobia and these big red drum, a lot of people are going to go grab a 10 weight.
Okay.
I will tell you, maybe I'm just starting to get a little bit older. I'd start leaning more toward the 11s and 12s. I think it just lets you cast a little bit easier. You're going to fight the fish better. You want to get that animal to the boat as quick as humanly possible so you can get a good, clean release. So I encourage I know you can do it with a 10, just consider the 11, 12s. I think your day will be a lot smoother, and cut the ego out of feeling like you have to do it on something light, right?
Right.
All that matters is that you get to eat and you get to the boat side. So, a couple different ways you can go with line. You can go floating line or intermediate line. Some people can throw sink. It's whatever your preference is, but just happened this weekend, you and I were throwing an intermediate sinking line. So clear tip, just going to get it below the surface of the water, helps the fly get down a little bit. So that's the line set up either way. From there, the leader system, pretty straightforward. I'd say between like a 9-foot leader and a 12-foot leader, nothing epically complicated. I will personally extend or shorten that and manipulate the materials between mono or fluoro, depending on what I want that fly to do in the water column. Fluoro has a higher sink rate, right? So I can use materials and length that help also adjust depth, where I'm fishing in the column, or just trying to get that fly under the first maybe 6 inches of water a little bit quicker, right?
Yeah.
So that's it. I would say don't overthink it. As you kind of progress, you can start manipulating like that. But the reds, I don't think are absolute rocket science. I mean, you kind of get the fly in the middle of them, and you're probably going to at least get some attention, right?
Yeah.
Make sure your knots are good, because they're going to test them.
Yep.
But yeah, that's about it. Then, when it comes down to the fly, looking for a bait fish pattern, weighted or unweighted flies, that's going to depend on, what the situation gives you. We just so happen to be fishing a big weighted bait fish pattern.
Yeah, it was about what, 6-inch profile roughly.
About in there. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it had a little bit of added weight so that it
Just
dropped a
kind of
little
help get
bit.
down a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think we learned that lesson, what was it, 2 years ago when we got our first cobia
Cobia.
together.
Yeah.
We fished all day and we threw and threw and threw, and they would see it, they would follow it, but they just wouldn't commit. And then
Yeah.
towards the end of the day, you said, I got an idea.
Yep.
And you wrapped a little bit of lead wire around that hook shank and just enough to get it to drop in the very
Yeah.
next fish
A
that
little bit of,
came off that ray and smoked that thing, and boom, we were tight.
absolutely. Like giving a little bit of that jigging action. I mean, you kind of watch what a lot of the conventional guys do, and that very tried and true technique of jigging
Mhm.
that rod. How do you find some way to translate that technique to the fly world? You're not going to jig it with the rod so much. So, how do I make that fly create that up and down swimming, or that, hey, if I stop, I want that thing to dive straight down. Yeah, we got the weight on the eye, and yeah, that just hooked up right after that.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
So I want to talk folks through our trip this past weekend, going for these big bull reds. We left out of Lynnhaven. We went around the Cape. We'd heard there, been great reports of these redfish down off of like the Rudy Dam Neck area. We weren't really sure how to target them. We were cruising along about 2.5 miles off the beach, and we were super fortunate to mark a bunch. And then, I tossed a conventional jig in. We hooked one. We kind of let it run a little bit, and we were patient. And then, sure enough, the whole school surfaced right in front of us. And then, boom, talk us through that first hookup and what happened.
I mean, when they come get up to the surface, I mean, look, Ray Charles could spot those guys. I mean, it's like just like a beacon telling you what to do. So, probably put like a 60, 70-foot shot out in the middle of it, let it marinate for about, a beat or two, and then just start stripping. And there's no real secret to that with that fish. I mean, just the first ones that see it are going to come. So ended up hooking up real super fast, and thought we had that guy. Thought he was our candidate. Really good hard run, so we had a good hook set. He came unglued after some of his classic drum head shakes. Kind of regathered ourselves and continued on. And
I just want to stop for a second. We end up having another bite that comes off. It's like the adrenaline was so high. If we could go back into that moment where that fish comes unglued, and had we paused and said, let's just take some inventory here, what might have been the reason that fish came unglued? What would you have said?
So in hindsight, after 3 total eats, a little bit of interesting situations with missing another eat, which I'm not a professional, but I don't miss a lot of eats. Especially with a gummy mouth like that bread's got. I mean, it should find some purchase in there relatively simply and stick in there. And we lost that one, lost another one really quickly after that. And then obviously the one that we got bows out, we found out that one at some point spit the hook because it was foul hooked, which is later. But
yeah,
you start walking yourself through potential situations, and the gap in the hook, not maybe the size of the hook, but the gap in the hook. And, I'm not an expert when it comes to telling you all the specifics on that, but I've just seen plenty of situations where, you need a little bit more of a gap in there so that it can grab it. That's the first thing that comes to mind. If I could do it all over again, I'd like to have a little bit more of a gap and see if that solved our problem with the
is. So like fly hook size, what kind of gap would you go for?
Oh, the distance I couldn't tell you technically.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think the one we had was maybe somewhere between a 1/4 and 3/8 inch gap, or 3/8 to a 1/2 inch is probably where we should have been.
I know how wide open that hook was when we got back.
Yeah.
Where it had been spread, but what it started with, I don't have an eye for that, and I'm not I'm not one of these guys that could tell you everything.
Yeah. Well, let's just say it should have been a little bit bigger, because I think the idea is that if it was a little bit bigger gap, it could have driven a little bit deeper, certainly gotten past the barb, and then been,
that's what I would, that's what I'd like to think.
Yeah.
Just a little bit different hook.
Because man, I watched you set the hook on those 3 fish. Good Lord.
Strips at the hell out of it, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And to have what felt like very solid purchase on 3 fish and still had that same hookup problem. That's I mean, it's the old rubber hook thing. It's still fishing and stuff happens,
Yeah,
right?
you
But
learn as you go.
yeah,
I think if we, next time we get a chance to go out, we'll use that little bit bigger gap.
yep,
Another thing, you mentioned, dating the guides before you marry one. We've learned over the years how important communication is and getting on the same page about like, hey, what does your clock look like? If I say three, what's three? And point out what you think 60 yards is and get
yeah,
on the same page for those things. But something we learned this past weekend, which is so critical, sight fishing with conventional tackle and the speed at which you're looking versus fly fishing and the speed at which you're looking, meaning like how fast is your boat going? We figured out pretty quickly the other day that it was important to basically cut our looking speed in half because one of the challenges, when you're casting and stripping, you see a fish, you've got that, microsecond to get a
yeah,
accurate cast out. And I think the lesson we learned is by looking a little slower, that boat inertia stops quicker, which then you as the angler are able to give that fly action, versus just stripping to catch up to your
correct.
fly. You're actually giving
Yeah.
that fly action. And once we figured that out was when we actually started to really get some activity.
No doubt, especially those shots, I'd say from like probably 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock that are right off that bow region,
Mhm.
right? I mean, that's very critical to understand that like if you're stripping, are you even moving the fly or are you just gathering slack?
Right.
And that thing, yeah, that's big boat carrying a lot of weight
Mhm.
forward. So you got to be kind of conscientious of that. And then also in the current, depending on the tide. I mean, tide could be coming in and, you're literally just gathering up, a big piece
Right.
of spaghetti, right?
And meanwhile, that
Yeah.
fish is probably, swimming right by that fly, and it's nothing more than a static,
It's just
profile just sitting there. But
yeah,
if it get a little bit of action to it, it
yeah,
might see it and attack it.
yep.
So anyway, so talk us now. So we hook up to that third one, it runs, and then we settle into what? 27, 30-minute fight. It was brutal, dude. I thought you were done with perspiration. I didn't think there was any water left in your body. I
Yeah.
mean,
Just didn't understand. I mean, just could not understand why this fight was lasting as long as it was. Not to disrespect Red Drum, but I mean, obviously, they're even the puppy drums are no pushover when
yeah.
they want to be bullheaded, right? I mean,
Yep.
they can get you on the bottom and just sit there. But it's like this something was not right with the amount of time it took, and then finally we get that baby up on the surface to where we could actually see what was going on, and
Like worst foul hook spot
I
ever,
was
like
like,
right under the right under the
yeah,
pec fin.
yeah. So I mean, that was probably what 35, 40 minute
Easily.
just
Yeah.
pulling dead weight up off the bottom of the
I remember at one point looking over you and like,
terrible.
I was like, do I need to like hold him? Like, do I
Yeah.
need to help? Like, what am I doing? I'm like, but no, I can't take this away from him. That gives me a memory to like my best friend Butch from Alabama, with Great Days Outdoors, my first big yellowfin too. And I was begging him to take the rod. He's like, no, dude. He's like, this is you. You got to do it. But we finally, get it to the surface and we see color. We realize it's foul hooked. And at that point, back to communication. What did we do from the moment we saw that fish?
Yeah.
We probably could have tried to net it several times, but talk me through what we did.
Yeah.
That end result was we got it
That's
in the boat.
something that works very well with when you and I fish, and even though you're not a guide, I think we both have a very kind of laid back, quieter demeanor.
Mm,
And I personally feed off of the energy of volume, right? So,
yeah.
I was in the military, so volume means urgency. If you're yelling, that means go faster, go harder, right? So when someone stays calm, cool, and collected, I tend to kind of remain at that level. So as you're telling me, like, hey, like, just take your time with it, like, don't do anything outrageous, like, we're gonna get it in, just keeping calm, really helps in the middle of that chaotic situation. Just kind of keep your head about you. Don't try to force this thing in. We're almost there. Like, you're getting one more crank, right? Like
Yeah.
one more foot, you're almost there. But I think everyone's different. Some people get really, really excitable, and I think the reason we've had success is we both just kind of stay cool
Mhm.
until you get in the net, and then we freak
Then
out.
then we lost our minds. But to that point, I think one theme that we were discussing for probably the better part of like 7-8 minutes, once we saw color, we probably watched it do
Oh,
15,
circles.
16 death circles
Yeah.
within a foot or two under the water where we could have tried to net it, but we didn't. But the one thing we
Yeah.
kept saying to each other was, let's just keep the exact same pressure. Let's
Yeah.
change nothing. And eventually it was like you earned like an inch or two at a time with each death circle
That's it.
till finally that head was only an inch or two below the surface. And we were able to just do a nice, gentle scoop. We got it in the boat. And then the The crazy thing was we pulled a fly out of the fish and it is laid open. That barb was 45 degrees off that shank, laid open to where we realized in that moment, had there been excitement, had there been a change in tension on the line, very easily could have come unglued and gone from epic moment, great fish, citation, 46-inch bull red drum to just us here telling a commiseration story.
Just another story, right? And it's like, I mean, unless you have the ability to do a lot of fishing at the drop of a hat for a particular species like that, you just have to wait for your turn, for the weather window, for the fish need to be there in the right part of the season. And we had looked for reds, in the past a couple of years, and then finally we got that weather window, and it was the right part of the spring cycle. And yeah, I mean, it probably would have been another year of waiting
to get that one.
Yeah.
And it was awesome, man. I'm sure the people on the beach 2.5 miles away heard us screaming. It probably thought like, somebody was getting robbed out on the ocean because we were so excited, but goodness gracious. And, thinking back to that moment when those fish, came up, there was a pack of 3 cobias in the middle of them. And that was a difficult decision too. Like, well, do we throw it to cobias or do we throw it to reds? So
yeah,
man, it was such a fun day. And obviously, you bounce between Florida, Virginia Beach, Hawaii. But for those listening that, are either already avid fly fishermen or those looking to get into the sport to take on that challenge, that science, who would you recommend as a local guide to the Chesapeake Bay area here for folks to get up with and book a guide trip?
Yeah. So I'll tell you just from my personal experience. So if I'm leaving someone out, I completely apologize. I just haven't had the opportunity to fish with you. Chris Newsom is a big part of my success as well. Just one of the very first guys that I ever fished with. And he's a Chesapeake Bay guy, I think born and raised here, very knowledgeable of the entire, fishery, scientific standpoint, very personally accomplished fly guy. But I can't tell you enough good things about Chris, just salt of the earth, great guy. And I point anyone in his direction, no matter what level you're at, doesn't matter where you are, he's the guy.
Awesome. Yeah. And that's Chris Newsom with bayflyfishing.com. That's Captain Chris Newsom. You can reach him at 804-815-4895. Shoot him an email at chris@bayflyfishing.com. We'll drop that in the show notes as well. So yeah, folks, if you want to get out there and put yourself to the test on some fly tackle, give Chris a call. Ty, I can't thank you enough for just sharing the experience, the wealth of knowledge, a decade of fly fishing. I'm sure we're going to have more stories to tell in the future, and we could probably tell a couple of, sob stories of some of these gigantic cobia that didn't eat later in the day, but we'll save that for another time when we do actually button one of those up because we've got the citation red now together. We got to get that citation cobia together, and that'll be a future episode. So Ty, again, thanks for being on the show with us. Check him out online at 7fly7 on Instagram if you want to follow his journeys. He's always catching something somewhere in the world. So, folks, that's going to wrap up this really cool segment about fly fishing in the lower Chesapeake Bay. Y'all take a quick break and stick around. Fish bites. Whether you're hitting the bay to catch bait fish using the traditional scent strips or fishing the rivers or marshes for speckled trout, red drum, and flounder, Fish Bites has something for you. Family owned and operated in St. Augustine, Florida, they pride themselves on making reliably consistent fishing products for anglers of all ages around the world. Fish Bites baits and lures are made with pride in the Sunshine State, USA. Check out the full line of scented saltwater and freshwater baits at fishbites.com. All right, guys. Well, welcome to this What Did You Learn segment. I'm going to keep it brief today. We had a lot of great conversations. I was especially excited to talk to Captain Zach. Anytime a tournament's happening, it's exciting. And we were able to join the party there on Saturday night and watch the checks get presented. And just the energy in the room was just electric, hearing the dollar amounts that were getting paid out. And again, my hat's off to Captain Zach and his team on Not Tugging for securing that third place win and taking home that big check. I think a learning point there is just a reminder, just like what we talked about with Captain Jay Brooks on Smoke Show last week is, you go into a tournament of any type and you know your game plan, you stick to it, and you really just don't deviate. I think that mindset of having a plan that you're going to execute is so critical in any sort of a competition. and certainly in a fishing tournament, because if you do deviate and then you don't get the results you're looking for, there's going to be the woulda, coulda, shoulda that's going to drive you crazy versus agreeing on a plan and executing it. Jumping into the conversation we had with Captain Richard Wasden with Real Blessed Sport Fishing, lots of good insights there on how to target those flounder, what types of baits that you can use. I think one thing that really stood out to me was a great takeaway and tip is, opposed to just about every other fish out there that you go after, whether that's cobia or drum, in terms of a sport fish that you might, lift up, reel down, lift up, reel down, that tip to keep that line tight with just once you set the hook, keep that rod up and that rod bent. And then you just steady reel those fish in because of the way that they're shaking their face the whole time. I think that was a really good tip on how to secure those flounder and get them all the way to the boat. I certainly would have never thought to fight a flounder like that. So definitely appreciative of that tip. And then, dig into that conversation about fly fishing with Ty Griffith from Seven Fly Seven. Learned so much. I had no clue the level of intricacy that was involved in fly fishing. To think about, the differences and in the gap in the hook, kind of like what we talked with Captain Richard about, chumming for cobia. That gap makes a big difference in how much, hook set or purchase, as Ty would say, you get when you do button up on one. So it's just a good, I think, moment of introspection to think about whatever you're doing from a fishing perspective to, don't glaze over the details. Pause and think through what you're doing. Make sure that you're confident in what you're doing. That's something we've talked with Captain Eric Myers on Heads and Tails about before is, be confident in the lure that you're fishing. You should also be confident in your setup. Don't skip steps or guess. Take the time and do your research. Listen back on the previous shows, listen to what the captains are saying. These guys are out there every day doing it, and they know the difference of how to close those margin gaps between, hookups and not hookups. And a lot of times it comes down to some of those finer details. I also picked up on Captain Richard talking about using 10-pound test when targeting those flounder, which is way lighter than I would have ever thought to use, but certainly gives you a little bit better chance to feel that bite coming up off that line. And then if you do, get hooked up, like he said, just keep that steady pressure reeling that fish all the way up to the net. And then again, jumping back over to some of the stuff that Ty was talking about, working with a captain, dating your captain before you marry him, definitely comical to say, but makes a lot of sense, just how important that accurate communication is between the guy on the bow and the guy in the tower to work together and be able to make that bite happen. And I think one of the biggest lessons that we learned working together was just how critical it is to fish at the right speed so that when we do get a fly going, that when you're stripping and trying to create some action and animate that bait in the water, that you're not just closing the gap of, the boat moving further forward, but you're actually, able to get that bait moving. So fishing at a slower speed, communication, absolutely key. Lots of great stuff this week. I enjoyed every single conversation so much. We're getting so much depth and understanding about what's going on our local waters. Again, just want to, share the thoughts that Kat and Kenny had a couple weeks ago and that we talked about briefly about communication when you hit these drum schools, work together, communicate. I think that makes a big difference of everybody being able to enjoy it versus, pushing the school down potentially. Yeah, guys, we've got some great fishing ahead. It is just getting so good. We are so fortunate this year to have so much bait presence and good weather. So I hope you guys are out there taking advantage of it. If you've got a boat or if you've got a kayak or if you can get to a beach somewhere or a pier. If not, you've got so many great options with all of the great local captains we talked to on the show. Look them up. They're in the show notes. Get booked with them. Get out there, catch some fish, make a memory. And have some fun doing it. So, guys, that's going to wrap up What Did You Learn? Let's take one more quick break. Y'all stick around. GreatDaysOutdoors.com. Great Days Outdoors has been the premier destination for hunters and anglers looking for a comprehensive look into the outdoor lifestyle since 1997. Our stories are crafted by dedicated journalists who live, eat, and breathe all things hunting, fishing, conservation, and land ownership. Check them out at GreatDaysOutdoors.com. That's going to wrap it up this week. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. And remember, to get your free AFTCO Camo Sunglasses Cleaning Cloth, just text the acronym LCBFR to 779-345-2918 to get your promo code and be added to our email list so we can send you the new show each week. You guys keep whacking them and be safe out there.